Emily once believed she had found the kind of love that could survive anything. To her, David wasn't just a partner. He was her entire world, the man who made her believe in forever. She loved him more than herself, trusting every word, every smile, every promise he whispered in the quiet of their nights. But love, when blind, can be the cruelest of traps. What Emily didn't know was that her devotion would soon shatter under the weight of betrayal. And when the truth finally surfaced, it would change her life in ways she never imagined. Emily's story begins on a rainy October evening in Boston when she first met David. She was standing outside a small bookstore, trying to shield herself from the drizzle with a flimsy umbrella that was threatening to flip inside out. David had appeared suddenly, offering his own umbrella with an easy smile. "Looks like yours is fighting a losing battle," he joked. That moment, simple, ordinary, became the start of something she thought was extraordinary. Their connection was instant. He had a charm that felt effortless, the kind of presence that made everyone else in the room fade into the background. For Emily, who had spent years burying herself in work and responsibilities, David was like a burst of color in her carefully ordered world. He made her laugh in ways she hadn't in years, made her feel young and reckless again, as if life was suddenly something to be lived rather than endured. Within months, they were inseparable. Long walks by the harbor, nights spent cooking cheap pasta in their tiny apartment, whispered dreams of the future. Those became the foundation of their love story. Emily often found herself marveling at how lucky she was. Friends would tell her, "He looks at you like you're the only person who exists," and she would smile, secretly believing it was true. But even in the early days, there were cracks Emily chose not to see. David had a temper that sometimes flared without warning. If plans didn't go his way, if someone disagreed with him, his voice could cut sharper than a knife. Once, after a small argument, he disappeared for 2 days without explanation, returning with flowers and an apology that melted Emily's anger. "I just need space sometimes," he had said, pulling her into his arms. She believed him. She always believed him. Her love for David wasn't rational. It was consuming. She supported him through every job he lost, every reckless decision, every promise that never seemed to materialize. She worked extra hours at her firm to cover rent when he fell behind. She overlooked the secrets, the unanswered calls, the nights he claimed to be busy. Because every time he looked at her with those soft eyes and whispered, "I love you, Em. You're everything to me." She believed those words were stronger than the doubts gnawing at her soul. To Emily, this was love, the kind of love you fought for, the kind you bled for, the kind you never gave up on. She thought their bond was unshakable, that no storm could break them. But storms have a way of revealing what the sunshine hides. And soon, Emily would discover that the man she loved more than herself was hiding a truth so devastating. It would tear apart the very world she had built around him. The first time Emily noticed something was wrong, it was almost by accident. She was doing laundry one Sunday afternoon, humming quietly to herself, when she felt a crumpled slip of paper in the pocket of David's jacket. Curious, she unfolded it, expecting maybe a grocery list or a gas receipt. But what she saw made her heart skip. It was from a jewelry store, an expensive one downtown. A necklace, delicately described on the receipt, priced far beyond what their struggling budget could handle. Emily froze, staring at the receipt, her mind spinning. At first, her heart filled with excitement. Could this be it? Maybe David was planning something special, maybe even a surprise vow renewal. The thought made her chest ache with happiness. She smiled to herself, carefully tucking the receipt back into his pocket. She wanted to let him surprise her. That night, she cooked his favorite meal, roasted chicken with garlic mashed potatoes, something she only made on rare occasions. When David came home, she greeted him with a kiss, her heart pounding with a secret she thought she understood. He seemed tired, distracted, but smiled as he sat down to eat. "You didn't have to go all out, Em," he said, squeezing her hand. She just smiled, saying softly, "I wanted to." But deep down, a small unease tugged at her. If he was planning something for her, why hadn't he slipped, just once, with a hint? Why hadn't he seemed more affectionate, more intentional? A week later, David told her he needed to stay late at work. "Extra shifts," he said casually, pulling on his jacket. "I want us to get ahead, Em. I'm doing this for us." His words warmed her heart, even as doubt lingered in her mind. She kissed him goodbye, whispering, "I'm proud of you." But that night, while scrolling through social media, Emily's world tilted. A photo flashed across her feed, tagged by a mutual acquaintance. It was David, sitting in a cozy restaurant, laughing with a woman Emily had never seen before. And around that woman's neck was the necklace from the receipt. Emily's stomach dropped. Her chest tightened as if the air had been sucked from the room. She zoomed in on the picture, her hands trembling uncontrollably. It was unmistakable. The necklace, the smile on his face, the way his body leaned toward the other woman. That was her smile. That was her necklace. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in the dark, staring at the door, waiting for him to come home. When he finally did, past midnight, his shirt slightly untucked and his hair tousled, she forced herself to stay calm. "Hey, Em," he said casually, dropping his keys on the table. "Sorry, long night." Her throat burned with unspoken questions, but she managed a small smile. "I made you some tea," she whispered, sliding a cup toward him. Because in that moment, Emily realized something. Sometimes betrayal is too sharp to confront immediately. Sometimes you don't scream or accuse or demand answers. Sometimes you wait. And Emily decided she would wait and watch. The tea had gone cold by the time David finally went to bed that night, but Emily sat awake in the silence, her mind racing. Every smile he had ever given her now felt suspicious. Every late night replayed itself in her head like a broken record. She stared at her hands, trembling, asking herself the question she wasn't ready to answer. Was it really possible? Could the man she loved more than herself be betraying her so cruelly? The next morning, David kissed her cheek before leaving for work, and Emily forced a smile, her chest aching as she whispered goodbye. But this time, instead of letting him walk out of her life unquestioned, she began to notice the details she had always ignored. The way he avoided leaving his phone unattended, the way he brushed off questions about his schedule, the way his eyes darted away when she asked if everything was okay. By midweek, Emily's desperation pushed her past hesitation. One evening, when David showered, he left his phone charging in the kitchen. Her heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it through the running water. Hands trembling, she picked up the phone. The screen was locked, but Emily had watched him enter the code countless times. She pressed the digits carefully, praying she remembered correctly. The phone unlocked, and what she saw sliced through her like a knife. Messages, dozens of them. A woman named Claire. The texts weren't vague or innocent. They were raw, affectionate, intimate. "Last night was perfect, babe. I can't wait until it's just us." Another read, "Don't worry, I'll leave her soon. She's nothing compared to you. You're my future." Emily's knees buckled. She sat at the table, clutching the phone as tears blurred her vision. She's nothing. That was what he thought of her. The woman who had stood by him, sacrificed for him, given him everything. She scrolled further, her stomach twisting. Photos. Claire smiling at him, her head on his shoulder. Their hands entwined. And then, the necklace. the same necklace Emily had once believed was hers. She set the phone down just as she heard the shower shut off. Her body shook, but she wiped her face quickly, forced herself to move, to act normal. By the time David walked into the kitchen, towel around his waist, she was rinsing dishes as if nothing had happened. "You okay?" he asked, casually, as though nothing in the world was wrong. Emily nodded, her back to him. Just tired. But inside, something had shifted. The Emily who loved him blindly had died in that moment. What remained was a woman filled with quiet resolve. That night, she lay beside him, staring at the ceiling while he slept peacefully, oblivious. And she made a silent promise to herself. She would find out everything. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal. Because if David thought she was nothing, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The days that followed were some of the hardest of Emily's life. Every time David kissed her goodbye, every time he texted that he'd be late at work, the words burned like acid in her chest. But instead of breaking down, she hid her pain behind carefully practiced smiles. He thought she was still blind, still the devoted wife who would never question him. And that illusion was exactly what she needed. Emily began keeping track. Every excuse, every shift he supposedly worked. Every night he came home late, she logged it all in a small notebook she tucked beneath her pillow. She became an observer in her own marriage, quietly studying a man she no longer recognized. And then came the night she decided to follow him. David left at 6:30, saying he had a meeting with a client. Emily waited a few minutes, then slipped on her coat and followed. Her hands shook on the steering wheel as she trailed his car through the crowded streets of Boston. She had never imagined herself doing something like this, spying on the man she loved. But love had been replaced by something sharper, something that demanded truth. He pulled into a dimly lit restaurant on the edge of town, the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be seen. Emily parked far back, her breath shallow, and watched. Her chest tightened as another car pulled in moments later. A woman stepped out, tall, with long brown hair. Dressed in a way that spoke of quiet elegance. Claire. David's face lit up when he saw her. He leaned in, kissed her like he used to kiss Emily, his hands lingering on her waist. For Emily, watching from the shadows, it felt like being stabbed over and over again. She pressed her hand to her mouth, holding back a sob. For nearly an hour, she sat in her car, watching them laugh, touch, whisper across the table. It wasn't just an affair. It was intimacy, comfort, a stolen life that David had built with someone else. When they finally left, Emily followed at a distance, expecting David to head home. But instead, she watched them pull into an apartment complex. Together. She saw them disappear inside, their laughter echoing faintly across the parking lot. Her world collapsed in that moment. Not only was he unfaithful, he was building a future with someone else while still sleeping beside her at night. The next day, Emily couldn't take it anymore. She found Claire online. At first, she considered sending a message, angry, accusatory, demanding. But something inside her stopped her. Instead, she decided to meet her in person. She wanted to look this woman in the eyes. When she finally did, it was nothing like she expected. Claire wasn't smug or cruel. She looked shocked, pale, her voice trembling when Emily introduced herself. "Wait, you're his wife?" Claire whispered, her face draining of color. "He told me you were his ex, that you wouldn't leave him alone." For the first time, Emily saw it. Claire wasn't her enemy. She was just another victim of David's lies. And in that moment, something shifted. The two women, once divided by betrayal, found themselves bound together by the same cruel deception. The cafe was quiet that afternoon, sunlight spilling through the windows as Emily and Claire sat across from each other, hands wrapped around untouched cups of coffee. For a long time, neither spoke. It was as if they were both trying to process the absurd reality they now shared, that the same man had stolen both their hearts, played them both like pawns, and built a fragile web of lies between them. Claire was the first to break the silence. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "I had no idea, I swear, Emily. He told me you were his ex, someone who just couldn't let go. He said you were unstable." Emily's stomach churned at the words. She had heard David use that excuse before, not about Claire, but about others in his life. She's overreacting. She's crazy. She's imagining things. It was his shield, his way of deflecting blame. She realized then just how deep his manipulations ran. "I believed him," Claire continued, her eyes filling with tears. "Every promise he made, every late-night call, I thought it was real. I thought we were building a future together." Emily's throat tightened, but she forced herself to stay composed. "I believe the same thing," she said quietly. "But we can't let him keep doing this. We can't let him walk away as if none of it matters." From that moment, an unspoken alliance was born. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Claire became secret partners in uncovering David's double life. They shared screenshots, recordings, and dates. Emily documented every late shift that coincided with Claire's supposed dinners. Claire forwarded messages where David had promised he'd leave his wife soon. Piece by piece, they built a case, proof that David was not just unfaithful, but a master manipulator. It wasn't easy. Some nights, Emily lay awake staring at the ceiling, the weight of humiliation pressing down on her. How had she not seen it? How had she given so much of herself to a man who cared so little? And yet, every time she felt herself breaking, she thought of Claire, of the betrayal they both carried. The solidarity gave her strength. Claire, too, was unraveling. She admitted to Emily one evening over the phone, "I feel stupid. I thought I was special. I thought he loved me. Now I realize he was just using us both." Emily's reply was firm, steady, the voice of someone slowly reclaiming her power. "We're not stupid, Claire. He is, and when the truth comes out, he'll have no one left." Together, they decided the confrontation had to be public. David thrived on secrecy, on hiding behind masks. To tear those masks away, he needed to be exposed where he couldn't escape, where every lie would shatter in front of witnesses. Emily suggested a restaurant, the same one he once took Claire to, the same one where Emily had seen them together. "He won't expect it," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We'll sit him down, and then we'll show him everything." For the first time in weeks, both women smiled. Not because they wanted revenge in the form of screaming or chaos, but because they were taking back control. David had stolen their trust, their love, their time. Now, they would take something from him, his facade, his lies, his comfort. And as Emily closed her notebook filled with evidence, she felt something she hadn't in months: power. The night of the confrontation arrived like a storm Emily had been bracing for. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the simple black dress she chose to wear, not for David, but for herself, for strength. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, her eyes sharper now, no longer the soft gaze of a woman blindly in love. Tonight, she wasn't the Emily who forgave, who overlooked, who swallowed her pain. Tonight, she was the woman who would make him face the truth. She texted Claire, "Ready?" The reply came quickly, "Let's finish this." David thought it was just a dinner date with Emily. She had told him she wanted to reconnect, that she missed the way things used to be. He agreed, easily, flashing her that familiar smile, the one that once made her heart skip. Now it only made her stomach twist. The restaurant buzzed softly with chatter, the clinking of glasses and the hum of live piano. David sat across from her, pouring on the charm, talking about how busy work had been, how he was trying his best. Emily nodded, listening with quiet detachment, her heart pounding with every passing second. And then the door opened. Claire walked in. Emily watched David's face, the way his smile faltered, the way his hand froze mid-gesture, the way panic flickered in his eyes. He shifted in his seat, sweat already gathering at his brow. "David," Emily said softly, almost tenderly, though her voice carried steel. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." Claire slid into the chair beside Emily, her expression calm but firm. "Or maybe," she said, locking eyes with him, "you already know me." The blood drained from David's face. "Claire, what are you doing here?" His words stumbled, grasping for ground that wasn't there. Emily leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "Maybe you can answer that. Tell me, David, which one of us is your future?" The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Around them, forks stilled and conversations hushed as nearby diners sensed the drama unfolding. Claire placed her phone on the table and pressed play. David's own voice filled the air, his promises, his declarations, his lies. "Don't worry, I'll leave her soon. She means nothing. You're my everything." His eyes widened in horror as the words echoed through the restaurant. Emily watched him squirm, sweat rolling down his temple. He opened his mouth to speak, but Emily raised her hand. "Don't," she whispered. "Not this time. No more lies." For the first time in years, David had no script, no excuse, no charm to shield him. His carefully crafted world was crumbling in front of two women who finally saw through him. Emily stood, her chair scraping against the floor. Her voice was steady, though her chest heaved with the weight of everything she had carried. "You don't get to choose between us, David, because you've already lost us both." Claire rose too, her chin high, her dignity intact. Together, they walked out, leaving David sitting in the ruins of his deceit. And as the whispers of onlookers followed them out the door, Emily felt a strange, powerful freedom. The man she once loved more than herself no longer had the power to break her. The night after the confrontation, Emily expected silence. She thought David would stay away, too ashamed to face her. But she underestimated his desperation. At 2 a.m., the pounding began on her apartment door. "Emily, please, just let me explain." His voice was ragged, frantic. She sat on the couch, staring at the door, her body stiff. For hours, she had replayed the restaurant scene in her head, the panic in his eyes, the way his lies unraveled, the whispers of strangers watching his mask collapse. A part of her felt vindicated, but another part still ached, still grieved for the man she thought she had loved. The knocking grew louder. "Emily, open the door. You can't just throw away everything we had." Finally, she stood, her steps slow, deliberate. She opened the door just enough to see him standing there, hair disheveled, eyes wild with panic. He looked nothing like the man who once made her feel safe. "Go home, David," she said quietly. "Home? You are my home," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "Emily, I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. You're the one I love. You're the one I want." Her eyes stung, but she forced herself to hold steady. "You told her the same thing. You told her I meant nothing. So which version is the truth?" He faltered, his mouth opening and closing, no words coming out. She saw it clearly then. He wasn't sorry for betraying her. He was sorry for being caught. "I gave you everything," she whispered, her voice breaking despite her resolve. "I loved you more than myself, and you used that love to destroy me." "Emily, please." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back, her expression hardening. "No," she said firmly, her voice gaining strength. "You don't get to touch me. You don't get to fix this with words. You don't get another chance." She closed the door in his face, his desperate knocks echoing for a while longer before finally fading into silence. When it was quiet again, Emily slid to the floor, her body trembling. The tears came hard and fast, years of swallowed pain and ignored red flags pouring out of her. She cried not just for the betrayal, but for the woman she used to be, the one who thought love meant sacrificing herself, who believed loyalty could fix everything. The next morning, she filed for divorce. Her lawyer assured her that with the evidence she had gathered, David wouldn't walk away with much. For the first time in years, she felt like she was standing on solid ground, making choices for herself and not for the man who had stolen her peace. David tried calling, texting, begging. He sent flowers to her office, long emails filled with promises. But Emily didn't waver. She didn't block his number right away. She wanted to read every word, not because she believed him, but because every lie reminded her why she was leaving. Each message was proof of who he truly was, and each day she felt the weight lifting a little more. The weeks after filing for divorce were a blur for Emily. But for the first time in years, it was the kind of blur that carried hope instead of dread. She woke up without the constant knot of anxiety in her chest, without the gnawing fear of what excuse David would come home with next. Her mornings became hers again. She drank her coffee slowly by the window, savoring the silence that once felt lonely but now felt like freedom. Still, healing wasn't instant. Some nights, she lay awake, haunted by memories, the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his touch, shadows of a man who never truly existed in the way she believed. She realized she wasn't just mourning David. She was mourning the woman she had been with him, trusting, hopeful, blind. But every morning, she chose to get up anyway. She filled her days with small acts of rebuilding, joining a yoga class, volunteering at a local shelter, even signing up for a painting course she'd always wanted to try. Claire called often, too. The two women, once strangers bound by betrayal, had become unlikely friends. Their conversations shifted from painful dissection of David's lies to lighter topics, work, hobbies, dreams. One evening, over dinner, Claire admitted, "I feel like I wasted so much time on him. But then I think, maybe meeting you was the only good thing that came out of it." Emily smiled, touched. Then maybe that's how we win. Not by holding on to the anger, but by turning his lies into something stronger for us. Meanwhile, David's world was crumbling. Through mutual acquaintances, Emily heard pieces of gossip she hadn't even cared to chase. Claire had cut all ties with him, and when word of his double life spread, his reputation at work suffered. Friends who once admired his charm now whispered about his deceit. Even his finances unraveled. Emily's lawyer made sure she received her fair share, leaving him scrambling to cover debts he had hidden for years. Emily didn't revel in his downfall. She didn't need to. His destruction was his own doing, and she had no desire to stand in the ashes with him. Her focus was forward, on building something new, something honest. One Saturday morning, she stood in front of a blank canvas at her painting class, brush in hand. The instructor encouraged them to paint whatever they felt in that moment. Emily dipped her brush into a swirl of blues and golds, her strokes hesitant at first, then bolder, freer. When she stepped back, she saw not just colors on a canvas, but a reflection of herself, broken once, now reshaping, vibrant, alive. For the first time, Emily laughed without restraint. It was the sound of a woman rediscovering herself, a sound David could never take away again. And as she packed up her brushes, she knew this was only the beginning of her new story. It was a quiet spring afternoon when Emily saw him again. She hadn't planned it. Life simply has a way of putting old ghosts in your path when you least expect it. She was walking through the farmer's market, a canvas bag slung over her shoulder, when she heard a voice behind her. "Emily?" She froze. The sound was unmistakable. Turning slowly, she saw David standing a few feet away. He looked different, thinner, his eyes weary, his once confident posture slumped. The man who once filled every room with charm now seemed like a shadow of himself. For a moment, Emily's heart stuttered. Memories flickered. Their first kiss, nights of laughter, the way she once thought he was her forever. But then she remembered the texts, the necklace, the lies. And just like that, the weight she used to carry didn't return. She felt lighter, stronger. "David," she said calmly, her tone polite but distant. He took a hesitant step closer. I didn't expect to see you here. You look good." His voice cracked with something that sounded almost like regret. "Thank you," Emily replied, her eyes steady. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her shaken. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared at her as though he wanted to bridge a gap that could never be closed. Finally, he whispered, "I messed up, Emily. I lost the best thing I ever had. I think about you every day." Her stomach tightened, but she didn't flinch. "You didn't lose me, David," she said softly. "You threw me away." He winced, as though her words had struck harder than any scream ever could. "Can't we try again? I know I don't deserve it, but no." The firmness in her voice surprised even her. She shook her head slowly. "You had my love. You had my trust. And you destroyed both. There's no going back from that." David's eyes glistened, but Emily felt no pity. She wasn't cruel. She didn't wish him pain, but she finally understood that his downfall was his to own, not hers to fix. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for," she said finally, "but it won't be with me." With that, she turned and walked away. Her steps were steady, her heart calm. Behind her, she didn't hear him call again. She didn't need to. The past was behind her now, a closed chapter. When she reached her car, Emily sat for a moment, breathing deeply. She expected to feel shaken, but instead she felt free, stronger than she had ever been. That chance encounter had proven what she had known deep down. David no longer had any power over her. She smiled faintly, starting the engine. Her life wasn't about him anymore. It was hers, untouched, unbroken, and waiting to be lived. And as she drove away, Emily knew this was the true ending of their story. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with freedom. Months passed, and the weight of David's betrayal became nothing more than a distant echo in Emily's life. She had rebuilt herself piece by piece, and each day she discovered just how strong she truly was. The scars of what he had done were still there, but they no longer defined her. They were reminders, not of her weakness, but of her survival. Emily often spent her evenings walking through the park near her apartment, watching children play, couples strolling hand in hand. The sun dipping low in golden streaks. She no longer envied anyone. She no longer felt the hollow ache of loss. Instead, she felt gratitude that she had escaped a love that wasn't love at all. Claire remained a close friend, their bond deepened not by pain anymore, but by resilience. One evening over coffee, Claire smiled and said, "You know, I think David thought he broke us, but all he did was show us who we really are. Stronger, smarter, free." Emily laughed softly, nodding. Maybe that's the irony of betrayal. It hurts, it breaks you. But if you choose to rise, it also makes you unshakable. Her life began to fill with new experiences. She traveled to Italy, something she had always dreamed of, but never dared while with David. She stood on cobblestone streets, tasted fresh pasta under the Tuscan sun, painted landscapes that looked like they belonged in fairy tales. She wasn't searching for anyone to complete her. She had completed herself, and yet she wasn't closed off to love. She knew that one day, if it came naturally, she might share her heart again, but it would be different this time. She would never lose herself for someone else. She would love with strength, with boundaries, with eyes wide open. One night, sitting by her window with a cup of tea, Emily reflected on everything she had endured. She thought of the naive girl who once believed love meant sacrifice, the woman who cried on the floor after shutting David out, and the version of herself now, whole, content, and free. She whispered into the quiet, "I loved him more than myself until I learned the truth, and the truth set me free." The lesson was clear, not just for her, but for anyone who had ever been betrayed. Love should never require you to lose yourself. Trust should be earned, not demanded. And when someone shows you who they truly are, believe them. Emily's story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about watching David fall. It was about reclaiming her power, her dignity, and her life. And that was the real victory. As she closed her eyes that night, a smile touched her lips. For the first time in years, the future didn't scare her. It excited her. Because Emily's story wasn't ending here. It was only just beginning.